Next up on questions and answers, we've got an interesting one that comes from Garth Goldberg, who writes, if you don't take the blades apart and clean them, you'll get crevice corrosion in between the blades and the spacers. Even stainless steel will corrode, especially where there's no oxygen. Now, Garth, you're correct. And that refers to the R30 blade cleaning video and all of the videos on the R30 where we demonstrate disassembly and cleaning of this blade hub and assembly. Now, all of these blade hubs that are able to be disassembled with any of the Robocoop machines need to be disassembled and sanitized daily because there are nooks and crannies and crevices and up inside the hub where food particles and stuff can corrode, can sit in there, and it can actually create corrosion and oxidation on the steel itself and also an unsanitary condition with foodstuff creating bacteria. So we do disassemble and sanitize those blade assemblies every day. That's a really great question, but we wanted to address the stainless steel and the rusting. This is a big misnomer in the industry. Everyone thinks that stainless steel means it will never rust. And what that means is it's actually rust resistant. It can oxidize and corrode, it just does it much more slowly than other types of metal. So you still need to clean and sanitize your equipment and dry it afterwards to make sure there's no corrosion going down the road. Great question from Garth Goldberg, thanks a lot. Next up is a question that comes from Striwa78, who writes, if I have the Ultra, can I get the dice attachment? Now what they're referring to, and this comes from the R2 Dice Pico de Gallo video, we were talking about dicing, but what that refers to is throughout the entire Robocoop line, there are standard machines and there are machines that can dice. They are two different machines, as we see right here. If you have a machine that can dice, it will say dice on the front of it, whether it's an R2, a 301, or any of the other machines that happen to dice. A regular R2 will not say dice on it, and it cannot accept a dice kit. You'll notice on the upper housing, there's a bump out on this housing to accommodate that dice kit, and that's how you can visually tell the difference between an R2 dice and a regular R2 that has a flat, straight-sided cutter attachment. So that's a good question from Striwa78. We're back here on the Rest Equip Pro channel today answering viewer questions. And next up is a great question. It comes from Ruth San, who says, I love all your videos. Do you know of any shrimp peeling equipment? Well, that's a really interesting question. That's why we're answering it right now. Out there in the world, at some point in the past, there was a manufacturer of a device that could be put on a regular R2N Robocoop. And that device looked somewhat like the cutter attachment that you'd see on a Robocoop, except it wasn't made by Robocoop. This is a third-party, separate company, but they made a device that goes on an R2 and it takes advantage of the rotation of the shaft and created a machine that you could put shrimp in and it would butterfly and devein them. It would cut the shell and go down the side. It would work better with headless, as I remember, but there was a device called the Shrimp Pro. Now it's out there. I don't know if you could look it up, go out on eBay, maybe find an antique somewhere. It'd be a novelty, it'd be a collector's item by now pretty much. But there was a device called the Shrimp Pro made for Robocoop specifically. That's why I like the question. But aside from that, there are other standalone shrimp peeling equipment. It's usually larger, more heavy-duty industrial equipment, so it's not really in our food service world or really accessible for home gourmet or small restaurants per se. That's why I mentioned the Shrimp Pro. It's the only thing ever out there in the industry, kind of a legend in the Robocoop world because it was made by somebody else and the Robocoop didn't really like that and that sort of thing. But it was out there and maybe you could find one. Great question, Ruth. A little bit of history on Robocoop there.